I was zipping up my jacket when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I almost ignored it. I was already running 5 minutes late, and my brother had texted twice asking where I was. Sunday brunch at his house? The whole family. My mom's famous coffee cake, probably. The usual. But something made me pick it up. The text was from Conrad, my dad's accountant. The man who'd managed our family's business finances for over 20 years. Conrad didn't text, ever. He was a landline and formal mail kind of person. So when I saw his name on my screen, my stomach dropped before I even read the words. Do not go to brunch. Call me right now. This is urgent. I stood there in my kitchen holding my phone, jacket half zipped, keys in my hand. My first thought was that something had happened to my dad. My dad passed 8 months ago, but his estate was still in probate, and Conrad had been handling the business side of things since then. I called him immediately. He picked up on the first ring. Thank God, he said. Where are you right now? My apartment. Conrad, what's going on? Is everything okay? He was quiet for a second. The kind of quiet that means someone is choosing their words very carefully. Audrey, he said, and then stopped himself. I'm sorry. I don't know why I called you that. You're not Audrey. I almost laughed. Audrey is my brother's wife. It's okay. I'm Claire. What's happening? Claire? He exhaled. I need you to come to my office. Not the house. Not anywhere near that brunch. I found something in the business accounts last night that I can't explain, and I think you need to see it before you sign anything today. I hadn't planned to sign anything today. As far as I knew, brunch was just brunch. What do you mean, sign something? Another pause. Your brother filed paperwork last week to restructure the business ownership. The way it's written, if you attend that brunch and accept any kind of payment from him, even him buying your coffee, it could be construed as agreement to the terms. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I don't know why the floor. My couch was right there, but I sat on the cold tile and stared at the wall. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Let me back up. My dad built Callaway Supply, a regional building materials company, from nothing. He started it in his 30s with one truck and a handshake deal with a lumberyard, and by the time he died, it had 17 employees and contracts with 3 counties. It wasn't a Fortune 500 company, but it was his life's work, and he always said it would stay in the family. He had 2 kids, me and my brother Finn. Finn is 41. I'm 32. We've never been close in the way some siblings are, but I always thought we were fine, respectful, cordial. He'd been running the day-to-day operations of the company for the last 3 years while our dad's health declined, and I've been working my own career in marketing about 2 hours away. Dad's will split the business ownership equally, 50% each, with a buyout clause if either of us wanted to exit. That was 8 months ago. Since then, Finn had been asking me, calmly, repeatedly, to consider signing over my share to him. He'd say things like, "It makes more sense. You're not involved in operations." Or, "I'll give you a fair buyout, Claire. I've run this thing for years." He wasn't aggressive about it. He was patient, logical, reasonable. I hadn't agreed, not because I wanted to run the company, but because something felt off. I couldn't name it then. I just kept saying I needed more time. I didn't know yet how right I was to wait. Conrad's office smelled like old coffee and printer ink. He had manila folders spread across his desk and his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, the way he always wore them when he was stressed. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Sit down," he said. "I'm going to show you something and I need you to stay calm." He turned his monitor toward me. It was a spreadsheet, bank transfers, dates going back 14 months, which meant they'd started while my dad was still alive, still lucid, but barely. "These are transfers out of the Callaway Supply operating account," Conrad said, pointing. "Into this account here." The receiving account had a name I didn't recognize, Bridgepoint Holdings, LLC. What is Bridgepoint Holdings? It was registered 8 months ago, 2 weeks after your father died. He clicked to another tab. This is the registered agent filing. The owner of Bridgepoint Holdings, LLC, was Finn's wife, Sophia. I stared at the screen for a long time. "How much?" I finally said. "So far, a little over $280,000. The room felt very still. "Conrad, did my dad know about this?" He took off his glasses, set them on the desk. "I don't believe he did. The transfers were structured carefully, always under amounts that would trigger automatic review. And they started in the last 6 months of his life when he paused, not reviewing statements closely. I thought about my dad in those last months. The oxygen tank. The confusion in his eyes some days. The way he'd ask me the same question twice in an hour and not realize it. He trusted Finn completely. We both had. Conrad kept going. He'd found something else. When Finn filed the ownership restructuring paperwork, the thing he'd mentioned on the phone, he'd included a clause that was buried in subsection 4 of the third exhibit. Conrad had almost missed it himself. The clause stated that if the minority shareholder, me, accepted any financial benefit from the majority shareholder, Finn, after the filing date, it would be interpreted as tacit agreement to the restructuring terms, full transfer of ownership rights, no buyout required. At brunch today, Finn had planned to hand me an envelope. Conrad knew this because Finn had mentioned it on a call 3 days ago, said he was going to take care of Claire and give her a little something as a gesture of goodwill before she signed. He'd been planning to hand me cash, and the moment I accepted it, I would have unknowingly signed away everything my father left me. I put my hand over my mouth. I thought about every Sunday brunch I'd sat through over the past 8 months. The way Sophia always smiled, just a little too long. The way Finn refilled my coffee before I'd asked, always so attentive. The way my mom had started saying things like, "Finn is carrying so much right now, Claire. You should really think about making things easier for him." I wondered when he'd started working on her. "I need to ask you something," I said to Conrad, "and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course." "Did Finn ever tell you that I was difficult? That I was being unreasonable about the buyout?" He looked at me steadily. "He told me you were going through something emotionally, that you were still processing your father's death and it was affecting your judgment." I nodded slowly. "And did that change how you approach things? With me?" A long pause. "I'm ashamed to say it might have. A little." He folded his hands on the desk, which is part of why I'm telling you this now. "I should have looked more carefully sooner. I'm sorry, Claire." I didn't have the bandwidth to be angry at Conrad. He was the one who'd caught it. He was the one who texted me at 9 in the morning instead of letting me walk into that house. "What do I do?" I said. He pulled a notepad toward him. "First, you don't go to brunch. Second, you call an attorney. Not your family's usual firm. They have a conflict of interest. Someone new. Today, if possible. Third," he looked at me carefully, "you need to know that what I found might be enough for a criminal referral. The transfers alone could constitute fraud, possibly embezzlement." He said it quietly, like he was handing me something heavy and wanted me to be ready for the wait. I sat in my car in Conrad's parking lot for about 15 minutes before I could drive. I called my best friend Jess and couldn't even get a sentence out before I started crying. Not the sad kind of crying, the furious kind. The kind where you're shaking because you trusted someone completely, and the betrayal is so precise, so calculated, that it makes you question every memory you have with them. That funeral. My dad's funeral. 6 months ago. It rained. I stood next to Finn under an umbrella, and he put his arm around me, and I remember thinking, at least we have each other. He'd already been stealing from the company for 2 months by then. He had stood at that graveside with his arm around me and a secret in his chest and a plan already in motion. I kept thinking about that. I couldn't stop. My attorney's name was Patricia. No, I can't use that. Her name was Gwen. Gwen Aldrich. She had an opening at 2 o'clock that same Sunday because, as she told me later, she always kept Sundays partially clear for exactly this kind of situation. "People find out things on weekends," she said. "Fraud doesn't wait for Monday." I laid everything out for her. Conrad's documents, the transfers, Bridgepoint Holdings, the brunch clause. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad in small, precise handwriting. When I finished, she put her pen down. "First question, does your brother know that you didn't show up to brunch today?" He texted twice. I didn't respond. "Good. Don't respond to anything from him or his wife until we talk again. Not a text, not a voicemail, not a reply emoji. Nothing." I almost laughed at the emoji part. But she was serious. "Second question, do you have access to your half of the business accounts?" "On paper. I've never actually used the login. We're going to change that this week." She tapped her legal pad. "Here's what I'm seeing, what your brother has done. If Conrad's documents hold up, and they look solid, crosses several lines. The transfers alone are a problem. The restructuring filing with that buried clause is another problem. The fact that he appears to have planned to hand you cash under false pretenses is a third problem. She paused. The fact that this started while your father was still alive, and possibly without his knowledge, that's where it becomes something much more serious. She said the word elder and let it hang there. I hadn't let myself think that far. I sat very still. What do we do? I said. For the second time that day, we document everything Conrad has. We file an injunction to freeze the business accounts pending investigation. We report to the state attorney general's office. She looked at me over her glasses, and we wait. I went home and I didn't tell anyone, not my mom, not my cousins, not the aunt who would have called Finn within 3 minutes of hearing anything. I sat in my apartment and I looked at the walls and I thought about how long this had been going on. 2 weeks after Dad died. That's when Sophia registered Bridgepoint Holdings. 2 weeks. My dad's body was barely in the ground and she was filing paperwork with the state. I thought about the first time Finn brought Sophia home, maybe 12 years ago. She was warm, loud in a fun way, always the first to arrive and the last to leave. My dad had loved her. He called her our bonus daughter. She used to cry at Christmas. I wondered if any of it had been real, or if it had always been about the company. That's the thing about this kind of betrayal. It doesn't just hurt you now. It goes backward. It edits every memory you have. You start looking at old photos differently, replaying conversations, searching for the moment when the warmth became strategy. I don't know if that version of Sophia ever existed. I'm not sure I'll ever know. The injunction went through on a Wednesday. Finn's attorney filed a counter-motion by Friday. He claimed Conrad had made errors, that the transfers were authorized, that I was acting in bad faith and attempting to undermine his leadership of the company. He also called my mom. I found out because she called me, upset, saying that Finn had told her I was trying to steal the business from him, that I was making things up, that Conrad had always had it out for Finn, and I was being manipulated. I listened to her say all of this. I didn't argue. I told her I loved her, and I'd explain everything soon. After we hung up, I sat with how that felt for a while. He called her before the legal process even got going. He'd gotten to her first. He knew exactly what he was doing. That's when I understood that Finn wasn't just greedy. Greedy people do impulsive things. Greedy people take shortcuts and hope no one notices. What Finn had done was slow and careful and thorough. He'd started while Dad was alive. He'd worked the timing, the paperwork, the family relationships, the brunch. He'd built something designed to be invisible. I stopped thinking of him as my brother that week. I don't mean I stopped loving him. I don't know what I feel about him, honestly, and I probably won't for a long time. I mean, I stopped assuming that the relationship I thought we had was real. I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt that came automatically just because we grew up in the same house. That's not giving up on family. That's just being accurate. The investigation took 4 months. I won't pretend that was easy. It wasn't. I went to work every day and came home and researched and waited and tried not to think about what was happening. Gwen was methodical and calm and never promised me anything she couldn't deliver. Conrad cooperated fully with investigators and provided every document they asked for. My mom came around slowly. Gwen had suggested I share the financial documents with her. Not everything, just enough. And I did, one afternoon at her kitchen table. I watched my mom look at the dates on the transfer statements. She's 71. She understood numbers her whole life. She worked bookkeeping at a dental office for 26 years. She looked at the date Bridgepoint Holdings was registered. She looked up at me. 2 weeks, she said. 2 weeks, I said. She didn't say anything else for a long time. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. That was enough. Here's what happened to my brother and his wife. The state attorney general's office investigated and referred the case to the district attorney. The DA filed charges against Finn for business fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and financial exploitation of an elder based on the transfers that had begun while my father was alive and incapacitated. Sophia was charged separately as the registered agent of Bridgepoint Holdings, through which the money had flowed. Finn's attorneys negotiated. There was no trial. He pled guilty to 2 counts of fraud and 1 count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He received 4 years, with the possibility of parole after 2. Sophia pled to 1 count of conspiracy and received 18 months plus restitution. The business, My father's business is still standing. I brought in an interim operations manager while the legal process ran its course, and I've been learning the parts of it I didn't know. It's hard. I didn't grow up planning to run a building supply company, but I grew up watching my dad build it, and I know what it meant to him. The money Finn transferred, most of it came back. Not all of it. Some had already been spent, but enough. Enough to keep the company solvent. Enough to feel like something was made right. There's one more thing I want to tell you. The morning that Finn entered his guilty plea, Sophia posted on social media a photo of herself at what looked like a coffee shop, smiling, with a caption about moving through hard seasons with grace. I saw it because a cousin sent it to me. I don't know exactly what she intended by it. Maybe defiance. Maybe performance. Maybe she needed people to see her as the one suffering. What I know is that by the afternoon of that same day, the post was gone. I don't know who reported it or what platform decided, but it disappeared. And by evening, local news had picked up the guilty pleas, and her name was in the headline. I won't say that felt good. It felt like a fact, like something settling into place the way facts do when they finally get room to exist. People ask me sometimes, after I've shared pieces of this, what the hardest part was. It wasn't the legal process. It wasn't the money, or the waiting, or even the documents. It was that Sunday morning, standing in my kitchen with my jacket half sipped, reading Conrad's text, and realizing that I had almost walked through that door. That I was 30 seconds from accepting an envelope of cash from my brother and smiling and thanking him and having no idea what I'd just done. That gap between what almost happened and what actually happened, that's the part that stays with me. Conrad texted me because something felt wrong to him. He could have waited until Monday. He could have told himself it wasn't his place. He'd been telling himself things weren't his place for months, apparently, and he's the first to admit it. But that Sunday morning at 8:45, something shifted, and he sent the text. I think about that a lot. The accidental saves. The small decisions by people who almost didn't make them. I kept the text, by the way. Conrad's original message. I screenshot it and put it in a folder on my phone that I look at sometimes when I need to remember how close things were. Do not go to brunch. Call me right now. This is urgent. That text is part of why Callaway Supply is still in my family. That text is part of why my dad's name is still on the building, and I will be grateful for it for the rest of my life. I think about cause and effect a lot now. Not in the abstract philosophical way, in a very practical, this is what actually happened way. Finn didn't lose because I was smarter than him. He didn't lose because I was smarter than him. He didn't lose because I caught him. For months, I didn't catch anything. I had a vague feeling that something was off, and I acted on that feeling by doing almost nothing, just stalling, just saying, I need more time, every time he asked me to sign. That instinct, that small, quiet resistance, bought me enough time for the truth to surface on its own. What Finn built was intricate, 14 months of careful transfers, a shell company in his wife's name, a legal clause buried 4 exhibits deep, a brunch designed to feel like family and function like a trap. That's not impulsiveness. That's a sustained choice, made over and over again to treat people who trusted him as resources to be managed. And the thing about that kind of choice is that it requires an enormous amount of energy to maintain. You have to keep the story straight. You have to keep the relationships performing. You have to keep your mother calling your sister to tell her she's being unreasonable. You have to keep showing up to Sunday brunch and refilling people's coffee and smiling like you're the one holding the family together, all while the paperwork is filed and the transfers are running and the clock is ticking toward the day you hand someone an envelope and watch them unknowingly sign away everything. That's exhausting. And exhausting things eventually crack. Conrad sent me that text because something shifted in him that Sunday morning. He'd been uncomfortable for months, he told me later. He'd been telling himself it wasn't his place. And then at 8:45 on a Sunday, he decided it was his place, and he picked up his phone. One decision. One text. The whole thing unraveled from there. I think about what that means. Not just for me, but as a general truth about how integrity works. It's almost never one dramatic moment. It's a series of small decisions. Finn deciding to take a little more, Conrad deciding to finally say something, me deciding to keep stalling even when I couldn't name why. Those decisions compound. The dishonest ones and the honest ones both. My dad spent 40 years making the honest kind. He built something with patience and handshakes and showing up. He didn't get rich fast. He didn't cut corners. He just kept making the same kind of decision over and over until there was a company with his name on the building and 17 people who depended on it. Finn thought he could take that in 14 months. He thought he could shortcut 40 years. He couldn't. I'm not running Callaway Supply the way my dad did. I'm learning as I go, making mistakes, figuring out parts of the business I never paid attention to. But I'm there. The name is still on the building. The employees still have their jobs, and every time I sit down at my dad's old desk and open the accounts, I feel the weight of what almost happened and what didn't. That gap between what almost happened and what didn't, that gap between what almost happened and what didn't is where I live now. It keeps me honest. It keeps me paying attention. And it makes me believe, not as a matter of faith, but as a matter of observed fact, that the choices you make accumulate into the life you end up with. Finn's choices accumulated into a guilty plea and 4 years. My dad's accumulated into something that outlasted him. That's the only lesson I've got. It's not complicated, but it's real.